Helldivers 2 is absolutely incredible. Oh, are you fucking kidding me? It's exciting, it's gorgeous, and more than anything, it's just plain fun. What the? Dude, he was faking death! I don't have to tell you that. A million other people already have. Helldivers 2 is clearly inspired by Starship Troopers. So inspired, in fact, that when I showed my dad a clip of it, he asked me when they made a Starship Troopers game. Which actually reminded me, they did make a Starship Troopers game. Starship Troopers Extermination came out last year, and by the looks of it, should have captured the same audience as Helldivers 2. Thing is, it didn't. Starship Troopers Extermination, or STE, flopped, with a max of 300 people playing it in the last 24 hours. But why? Well, the more I dug into it, the more clear it was that Helldivers 2 and Starship Troopers Extermination represent two entirely different ends of the modern gaming landscape. So sit back, strap in, and pour yourself a nice cup of liberty as I tell you why Helldivers 2 succeeded where Starship Troopers Extermination failed.
I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship.
Starship Troopers Extermination released back in May of 2023, except we have already reached my first problem with this game. It dropped with this dreaded thing attached to it. It just won't come off. For those unaware, early access is an indicator on Steam that a game has not technically fully released and is still being developed. In an absolutely perfect world, it allows some indie games to show off what they have and secure funding to continue developing the game into a more fully realized idea.
Is Ziggy dead?
I think I have Billy Lucky. Wait, is Ziggy already dead?
However, that's just not how it's used 90% of the time. The vast majority of early access games are titles that were rushed to release far before they were ready to be played, and the early access moniker just becomes a shield for all criticism. There are many examples of games that dropped in early access, promised a bunch of features, and then the devs just take the money and run. Starship Troopers Extermination actually saw high player numbers when the game first came out. The game had 16.3 thousand players on May 20th, which is actually incredible. Let's see where they were 1 month later. Oh, and where are they today? Oh, that's not very good. Well, let's take a look at Helldivers 2's release schedule. The game was formally announced on May 24th, 2023, 1 week after the release of Starship Troopers Extermination. It was published by Sony and set to release in 2023. This was actually later pushed back to 2024 to give the game more time in development. So the game comes out and wow, 144,000 players just on Steam. Well, games usually see a pretty big drop off after the release, so let's see where it is 1 month later. What the fuck? This has become not only a top 5 most played game on Steam, but the most played game on PlayStation Network. Its player base grew considerably after launch. The big reason why here is because Helldivers 2 is a fully realized game, not an early access horrifically buggy mess. To fully understand what makes this game better than Extermination, we have to look at 3 key categories: polish, gameplay, and value. When developers and publishers talk about their video games today, you'll hear insane sweeping claims about how the game is going to rock your world.
Biggest one yet. It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. It allows us to have 16 times the detail and even view distant weather systems across the map.
20 times the texture on Master Chief's ass armor. Then the game comes out, and no matter how nice Master Chief's ass looks, the game still has bugs like this. And worse yet, unkept promises. No co-op campaign, no forge mode, and a completely half-baked live service model. There are aspects of these games that are amazing, but completely dragged down by the lack of polish in other areas. Then we have Helldivers, which delivers on pretty much every front. The graphics are amazing. This is one of the most beautiful games that I've ever seen. The mechanics are well thought out and continue to improve on what they had in the first game, despite being vastly different games. The world feels fully realized, locations are designed incredibly well, and the guns are well balanced and continue to improve every update. But most of all, I really want to give props to the music and sound design. In many modern games, I turn off the music and play my own in the background because music and sound design are just kind of an afterthought. But in Helldivers 2, they did not hold back with this one. It makes me excited to drop in even after 40 plus hours of gameplay. I especially love how some parts of the soundtrack so closely resemble the Klendathu drop from Starship Troopers. Helldivers 2 didn't cut corners. The game is well made in all of the important areas, and the dev team is really transparent about the minor issues the game does have. Which of course brings me to Starship Troopers Extermination. This game released to early access almost a year ago, and it still feels insanely unpolished. The world feels incredibly lifeless. The locations feel big and empty, closer to a Gmod map than a 2023 video game. The tutorial is painfully boring. Oh, you're kidding me.
Canister from its dock on the refinery.
Not only does it not have enough voice lines to actually guide you through the whole process, it only teaches you about base building, which comprises about 20% of the game. Everything else, go figure it out. In Helldivers 2, the tutorial teaches you the majority of the mechanics you need to play through the game, and they go above and beyond.
So for this next part, make sure you dive into the trench and stay down the whole time. That's it.
Also, the main menu in STE is insanely bare bones. It resembles early Source games, but with some Starship Troopers assets pasted onto it. And Jesus Christ, this game is unbearably buggy, and not in the fun way.
This is fire to all Vanguard units at side.
Bugs glitch around the screen, their limbs go through walls and can kill you, but good news, you can still shoot them back. Some audio plays forever and never stops. And this is just from my first 30 minutes with the game. It's also horribly unoptimized and runs like absolute trash even on my pretty beefy computer. The game is just soulless. Here's what finishing a level and ranking up looks like. Could have done a little more dramatic with the rank up animation now. Just as exciting the second time. Now here's what it looks like in Helldivers. Oh yeah. Flawless demolition. Remember when I mentioned that audio in Helldivers was pretty good? That extends to the weapons too, which all have very distinct noises to them. Meanwhile, every gun in SDE sounds strikingly similar. Let's move on to gameplay. Helldivers is tight and incredibly cooperative. When you are playing on easier difficulties, it feels like you and your friends are on the stomping grounds, just casually mowing through bugs and having a good time. On harder difficulties though, you have to be a good team to make it through. You feel like Super Earth's most expendable soldier, just another pawn thrown at the enemies like you are useless. This is aided by the fact that when you die, you come back with a different voice, another Helldiver sent out to die for liberty.
Man, I can't believe we're actually gonna become Helldivers.
Now, looking at Starship Troopers Extermination, this is where things are going to get a bit more subjective, but I loathe base building. I think it is a terrible mechanic in an FPS game. This is some of the most boring gameplay imaginable. Every base ends up looking almost exactly the same, as the community has already optimized what works well. And so almost every game ends up feeling exactly the same. This especially sucks because all of the bug designs are incredibly similar and you can't tell some of them apart. And even if you could, it wouldn't matter because the gameplay is still the same. You bunker down and you shoot them. This gameplay that you're seeing right now, I hope it looks fun to you because this is the main gameplay loop. Bugs in SDE are also essentially harmless on anything but the hardest difficulty, in which they're just bullet sponges. Games as a result end up feeling mindless and boring. Where I will absolutely give SDE some credit though is the extraction. At the end of every mission, you sprint to the dropship and defend the area from bugs, and they up the spawn rate of bugs to add intensity. This is easily the most fun that you're gonna have in this game. The music ramps up, the respawning is disabled, and you actually group up with the other 15 people in the server to defend the ships. And it finally starts to feel like a Starship Troopers game. But it's just not enough to justify the gameplay that leads up to it. In Helldivers 2, on the other hand, you have 3 weapons that you're rotating through constantly because each of them serves a different purpose. Just with support weapons, you can roll with a single-use anti-tank missile, a railgun, a lightning gun, a flamethrower, or so many more depending on what kind of player you like to be. The options here provide way more room for expression. This all completely ignores what makes Helldivers 2 actually unique though, and that's stratagems. Stratagems are everything. You pick 4 to run with, and they can be any form of support you can call down. From a mortar sentry, to a laser rover, to a bubble shield, to a multitude of air support. Is a charger giving you trouble? Try the orbital rail cannon. Keep getting blindsided by rockets? Use the shield backpack. Big ass Bile Titan got your number? Have you considered using the big ass bomb? Stratagems make Helldivers what it is, and the different combinations you can run make each match feel unique and your teamwork even more important. Speaking of good teamwork, limiting 4 to a fire team makes each individual Helldiver feel more impactful. When you have a weak link on your team, you can really feel it, and by extension, when you are the weak link on your team, you can really feel it. This could be a good or bad thing depending on who you are, but I choose to see that as a bonus. Teamwork makes the dream work and is essential to surviving. Shit gets heated in Helldivers. At least once a match, it feels like you managed to escape an impossible situation by the skin of your teeth. I was initially really excited to see that Starship Troopers Extermination had a player cap of 16, until I played and realized I actually felt way more isolated than I ever did in Helldivers. You can often go off and do your own thing, and your absence just won't be noticed with 16 people. Assuming, by the way, you can get a match with 16 people. There are technically smaller squads that you join into, but gameplay wise they don't actually make much of a difference. So you still feel like a small fish in a big pond. My biggest problem with Starship Troopers Extermination is that it does not feel like Starship Troopers. All references to the Starship Troopers movie feel so in your face and surface level that it just rings incredibly hollow. NPC dialogue is bland and sparse, making it feel like any other war game.
We are reading that the mobile headquarters is online and operating at full capacity.
The world feels painfully barren and hardly resembles Starship Troopers at all. The main menu might as well have screenshots of the movie on them, and that's the closest this game feels to Starship Troopers. When exiting, you get this plain text that just says you're going to take a walk down Washout Lane. All references to Starship Troopers are like this. It feels more like they made a game and then 1 month before release were told they got the rights to Starship Troopers. Remember when I was talking about how ranking up didn't have any weight to it at all? Well, the ranked names don't either. Rank 3, rank 4, come on, man. In Helldivers 2, titles are cool and unique. You go from cadet to space cadet. You've got Sergeant and Master Sergeant and Death Captain and Super Citizen. Helldivers 2 feels much more like a Starship Troopers game than Starship Troopers Extermination, which is really saying something about a game that legally cannot be Starship Troopers. NPC dialogue could have come straight from the movie.
Now, they're coming for you. The only thing that can stop them, a strong economy. Don't let your family get murdered. Spend your extra cash today.
The gameplay loop feeds towards this idea of working towards an impossible goal for the dumbest, worst people imaginable. Again, looping back to the tutorial, if you kill your cardboard teammate before you are told to, this dialogue plays.
Man down! Don't sweat it, soldier. Friendly fire is just an unavoidable fact of life. Nothing at all you can do to prevent it. What you can do is use the reinforcement stratagem to replace your fallen comrade.
By completing the tutorial, you are agreeing to this long contract at the end that specifically states that reading the contract is traitorous behavior. The moment you walk into that held pod, canonically, the Helldiver is frozen until they are blasted on the Hellmire, a planet with fire tornadoes. I really hope I don't need to explain why I find that hilarious. The game takes itself seriously enough that the online community will post in character, and it's usually pretty funny, which is rare. I want to end this video by talking about the developers of both of these games, as well as the value of both of these games. Helldivers 2 devs have been absolutely incredible, especially for today's standards. The Battle Pass or War Bond can be earned in a reasonable amount of time without spending any real world money. And better yet, they don't disappear, so the devs aren't exploiting human psychology by creating FOMO. When the servers were full after the game came out, the lead at Arrowhead said not to buy the game until they increased capacity. That's unheard of. They delayed the game so it would come out in a better state. And most of all, it's $40. Many games today are releasing at $70 and are discounted weeks later at $20 because there's no goddamn content in the game, which sadly brings me to Starship Troopers Extermination. And now, based on everything you've heard me say today, you are probably expecting me to start shitting on these developers. But I'm not gonna do that, because I think they're pretty great too. There are some important differences between Arrowhead and Offworld. For one, despite both teams having about the same amount of employees, Offworld are split in developing multiple games. There's also likely a lot less funding for STE, and even though it's a $30 early access game that I would, to be clear, not consider to be a good deal, the devs have been updating constantly and communicating often. They do care about their player base. In fact, while I was editing this video, they released a big ass update. The update seems to have brought in a whole bunch of new bugs and problems, but you don't release a big ass update if you don't care about your game. The problem is that this game just isn't worth it, man. It looks like such a mess, and I absolutely despise the practice of releasing these early access games looking like a dumpster fire in the hopes that one day you can update it to be a shiny, pristine trash can. I highly doubt that this game will ever be finished, and now that Helldivers 2 is out, I don't think that this game will ever have the player count that it once had. Game development is hard, and I don't envy the studio behind Extermination, but it does make me appreciate Helldivers 2 that much more. A game that released in a polished state with unique and exciting gameplay for an excellent value. It's a legitimately rare gem in 2024.